Help me reach 2,000 subscribes. Support the video with a like, and leave your thoughts in the comments. I read every comment. Thanks. I was rinsing the soap off my car, the morning sun glinting off the hood, when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I wiped my hands on a rag and pulled it out, expecting the usual notifications, emails, a group chat ping, maybe a reminder about the grocery list. But this one wasn't like the others. It was from the bank, flagged under my wife's card. My thumb hovered over the screen, a small knot forming in my stomach. Her name was Emily, and we'd been married for 10 years. On the surface, everything seemed ordinary. A house, a couple of cars, dinners together most nights. Friends called us stable, dependable, the kind of couple that made them feel lucky about their own relationships. I used to think they were right. I used to believe it too. I swiped the notification open, my pulse picking up. The message was simple, almost clinical. A charge had been made, a transfer, one that didn't make sense. Not the usual grocery or utility bills, not her online shopping splurges. It was something else, something I didn't recognize. I leaned against the car, staring at the number, my brain racing. Emily had always been organized with money, meticulous. Nothing in our finances had ever been off limits. Every account was shared in some form, every major purchase discussed. I had never imagined waking up to a notification that felt wrong. It started small at first. Charges I didn't recognize, subtle ones, dismissed as mistakes or my own forgetfulness. But now, with this latest alert, something in me shifted. I tried to shake off the creeping suspicion. Maybe it was a bank error. Maybe she had a new subscription, something harmless. I rinsed the car again, but the water didn't reach the knot tightening in my chest. My mind drifted to the nights she'd been unusually quiet lately. The subtle avoidance when I mentioned plans. The little excuses. A meeting ran late, a headache, just didn't feel like talking. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Not yet. But a thread of worry had begun to weave itself through my thoughts. Later that day, I went about my routine. Work was ordinary, emails and calls filling the hours, but my attention was fractured. Every time my phone buzzed, I flinched. Every sound made me tense, waiting for the next notification, the next hint of something I wasn't meant to see. By evening, the unease had settled in like a weight I couldn't shake. Dinner was quiet. Emily smiled as she always did, but her eyes didn't meet mine for long. She talked about her day in the office, about a presentation, a colleague, mundane details that felt rehearsed. I nodded, sipped my wine, laughed when appropriate. But inside, the suspicion gnawed at me. Something was changing, something I couldn't yet name. After she left for her evening yoga class, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the phone again. The earlier notification replayed in my mind, each digit and transaction echoing louder than it should have. I opened the banking app, checking past activity. There was another unfamiliar charge, then another. Patterns emerged, subtle at first, but unmistakable when laid side by side. My chest tightened, the air thick with the realization that something was off, more than just an error. Sleep didn't come easy that night. I replayed the morning, the notification, her distance, the charges. My mind raced with possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. Was it carelessness? A mistake? Or was it deliberate? I had no evidence yet. Only the growing, uncomfortable sense that the Emily I thought I knew might be different from the one living under my roof. The next morning, I approached her casually, testing waters I wasn't ready to dive into. "Hey, did you make a charge yet?" I hesitated, naming the merchant in question. She looked up from her phone, eyebrows slightly raised. "Yeah, why?" Her tone was light casual, as if the words I was speaking were ordinary and meaningless. I tried to keep the tension out of my voice, but I could feel it crackling in the air between us. "Oh, just curious," I said. My mind raced, trying to read her expression, any microsign, any sign of evasion. But her face remained neutral. She smiled, soft and automatic, and went back to scrolling. That smile, meant to reassure, had the opposite effect. It only confirmed that something had shifted, subtly, dangerously. For the rest of the day, I moved like a man half awake, performing tasks with a detached efficiency. I watched, I noted, I waited. Every receipt, every email, every message notification became a piece of a puzzle I didn't want to see, but couldn't ignore. By evening, the tension had become almost unbearable. I walked past her as she prepared tea, careful to avoid any direct confrontation. My mind had moved past curiosity. This was no longer about charges or errors. It was about trust. The thread that had always bound us was fraying, and each unnoticed, unexplained action was a tug at its edges. I sat in the living room, the tea steaming untouched beside me. My phone buzzed again. This time, my hands were steadier, but my pulse was high. I opened it, and there it was, the notification that changed everything. A charge, not small, not accidental, and not in the categories we ever shared or discussed. The merchant name was foreign to me, the pattern clear. The realization hit me like ice water. She had been using the card in ways I wasn't aware of, and likely ways I would never approve of. The room felt suddenly smaller, tighter, suffocating. I stared at the screen, my mind spinning, and the calm, quiet life I believed in felt like it had been a mirage. For the first time, I truly understood that something had shifted irreversibly, a hidden layer beneath the normal, everyday life we had built together. I knew I had to confront it. I didn't yet know how or when. But one thing was certain. The Emily I thought I knew, the woman I had trusted, was no longer fully there. And whatever lay ahead, I would face it armed with the clarity that suspicion brings. The slow, cold awakening that sometimes the people closest to you harbor secrets you can't ignore. I waited until Emily had gone to bed, the house quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. My phone sat on the counter, the banking app still open, the transaction glaring at me like a spotlight. I didn't want to accuse her blindly. Not yet. I wanted facts. Proof. I opened my laptop and began tracing the charges, cross-referencing dates, times, and amounts. Patterns emerged: restaurants, hotel bookings, small online purchases linked to services I didn't recognize. Each one carved a deeper pit in my chest. By midnight, I had a clear picture. It wasn't just a few anomalies or innocent mistakes. Emily had been hiding transactions for months, creating a shadow layer of life I had no part in. My mind flashed to the subtle cues over the last few weeks, the unexplained late nights, the whispered calls, the small lies about errands. Every detail I had brushed off suddenly became a piece of evidence. I tried to calm myself. Stay rational, I whispered aloud. I had to approach this carefully. Confrontation now could escalate into anger, blame, regret. I needed her words, her reactions, to match what the data was telling me. The next morning, I waited until she left for work. The silence in the house was heavy, charged. I opened the filing cabinet and pulled out our past statements, receipts, everything I could get my hands on. I laid them across the kitchen table like pieces of a puzzle, tracing each transaction back to its source. Each step revealed another lie, another hidden action, and I realized the depth of the deception. I knew a confrontation was inevitable, and yet I wasn't ready for what it would truly feel like. When Emily returned, she smiled as she always did, but the smile no longer comforted me. I called her into the living room, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "Emily, we need to talk about the card charges. I've traced everything." Her expression shifted subtly, a flicker of tension beneath the practiced calm. "Oh, I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation," she said lightly, but the edge in her tone betrayed her. "I'm not sure there is," I said, keeping my voice low, deliberate. "These aren't mistakes. I know exactly where the money's been going." I laid the printouts on the table. She leaned over, scanning them quickly, her eyes narrowing. These aren't what you think," she began, but I cut her off. "Emily, I've tracked months of transactions. Hotels, restaurants, online accounts, things you never told me about. I trusted you." My hands trembled slightly, not with fear, but with the weight of betrayal. She looked away, fiddling with the edge of her sleeve. For a moment, silence filled the room, heavy and suffocating. Then she spoke, her voice quiet, almost resigned. "You don't understand. It's not what it seems." Then explain it, I said, because right now, it looks like you've been living a parallel life behind my back. Emily hesitated. Her eyes darted around the room, avoiding mine. I felt trapped, she admitted finally. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just needed something for myself. Something separate. I stared at her, the words sinking in. The rationale didn't soften the impact. The betrayal had already settled in, cold and hard. Separate. I repeated, voice tight. For months, you hid this from me. From us. From everything we built together. Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't move to comfort her. Not yet. My anger was tempered, not extinguished. I needed to see if there was honesty behind the remorse, if the woman before me could rebuild trust. She looked at me, pleading silently for understanding, but I knew some fractures were too deep, some walls too solid once trust is broken. We spent the next hour talking, carefully unraveling what had happened, why she'd acted the way she did, and what she expected going forward. I listened, absorbing every word, gauging whether the apologies were genuine or simply words to patch the guilt. I realized that love alone couldn't fix this. It required accountability, transparency, and effort she hadn't been willing to give until now. By the end of our conversation, the clarity hit me like a wave. I had to protect myself first, emotionally and financially. I calmly explained the steps I would take to separate our finances, to safeguard our home and our shared accounts. I wasn't cruel, but I was firm. Emily, I want to try to work through this. But we start with honesty, complete honesty. No secrets, no hidden transactions, no shadows between us. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. I understand, she whispered. For the first time, I saw a flicker of the woman I had married 10 years ago, the vulnerability beneath the facade, the person who had once been transparent with her heart. We spent the evening reviewing our finances together, clearing the misunderstandings, tracing each charge back to its source. Some were mistakes, some were poor decisions, some deliberate choices she regretted deeply. The process was painful, meticulous, and exhausting, but it was necessary. For the first time in weeks, I felt the heavy tension begin to lift. By bedtime, the atmosphere in the house had changed. Not fully healed, not entirely repaired, but shifted. A door had opened, one of honesty, acknowledgement, and the possibility of rebuilding. I didn't know if the cracks could ever be fully mended, but I knew that confrontation, clarity, and accountability were the only way forward. I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, letting the weight of the past few weeks settle. Betrayal was raw and heavy, but it had also brought perspective. I had faced it, confronted it, and established boundaries I would not compromise. The house was quiet, but no longer suffocating. I finally felt a flicker of control return to my life. Tomorrow, we would continue working through the aftermath. There would be apologies, conversations, and probably more difficult moments. But for now, the suspense that had haunted me for days was gone. I knew what had happened. I knew what I needed to do. And for the first time in a long while, I could breathe,